Do you truly know what life was like for medieval women? Could you survive a world where power, prayer, and shocking secrets were hidden behind ancient stone walls from the 10th to the 16th century? Number 9. Shaftesbury Abbey. Deep within the green heart of Dorset, a place of immense power and astonishing wealth, once stood the mighty Shaftesbury Abbey. This was no ordinary cloister. It was a veritable economic powerhouse, a spiritual fortress, and a political player that rivaled many a great lord. Founded in the late 9th century by King Alfred the Great, initially for his daughter Aethelgifu, Shaftesbury quickly ascended to become one of the most prestigious and opulent Benedictine nunneries in all of England. Its very foundation was steeped in royal intention, designed not just as a place of prayer, but as a symbol of Wessex dominance and a repository for royal daughters and widows. The Abbey's prestige grew exponentially when it became the burial place of King Edward the Martyr in 978, elevating it to a pilgrimage site of national importance. Pilgrims flocked here, seeking healing and solace at the shrine of the murdered king, and their offerings, along with vast landholdings and extensive feudal rights, swelled the Abbey's coffers to an unbelievable degree. The Abbess of Shaftesbury was a figure of formidable authority, holding a position of power that few women in medieval England could ever hope to attain. She was not just the spiritual mother of her community. She was also a major landowner, a feudal baroness with jurisdiction over numerous manors and villages, and a direct vassal of the crown. Her wealth was legendary. Records from the Valor Ecclesiasticus, a survey carried out just before the dissolution, show Shaftesbury's net annual income was well over £1,000, a staggering sum for the era, making it the second richest nunnery in England, sometimes even surpassing many male monasteries. This wealth meant that the nuns of Shaftesbury enjoyed a life of relative comfort compared to their more austere counterparts. While their primary duty was devotion and adherence to the Benedictine rule, the abundance of resources allowed for a certain grandeur in their daily lives, from the quality of their food and vestments to the maintenance of their sprawling, magnificent buildings. The Abbey precinct itself was a sprawling complex, a small town within walls. There was the impressive Abbey Church dominating the landscape with its towering spires and intricate carvings, a testament to centuries of accumulated wealth and architectural ambition. Surrounding it were dormitories for the nuns, a chapter house for important meetings, a refectory where meals were taken in silence, cloisters for contemplative walks, an infirmary for the sick, and extensive workshops where various crafts were practiced. Beyond these core monastic buildings lay barns, stables, mills, and numerous houses for the vast lay workforce, who managed the Abbey's estates and tended to its daily needs. Hundreds of people, from farmers and blacksmiths to scribes and cooks, depended on the Abbey for their livelihoods, creating a vibrant, self-sufficient community centered around the monastic heart. The sheer scale of its operations meant the abbess had to be not only a spiritual leader, but also a shrewd administrator, a skilled diplomat, and an effective employer. Life inside Shaftesbury, despite its wealth, was still structured by the strictures of monasticism. The nuns rose before dawn for matins, the first of the 7 daily offices, their voices echoing through the cold, vast church. Their days were a rhythmic cycle of prayer, study, manual labor, and reflection. However, the prestige of Shaftesbury meant that many of its nuns came from the highest echelons of English society. Daughters of nobles, even royal princesses, were placed here, not just for spiritual devotion, but also for the excellent education provided and for the security and social standing that such a renowned institution offered. These women brought with them not only dowries, but also connections, further enhancing the Abbey's influence. They were literate, often fluent in Latin and French, and their lives were not simply confined to the cloister. Abbesses of Shaftesbury regularly corresponded with kings, queens, and bishops, participated in legal disputes to protect their vast properties, and played a significant role in the political and social fabric of their region. One abbess, Agnes de Ferrers, who presided in the early 13th century, famously engaged in a lengthy legal battle over land rights, demonstrating the fierce determination with which the abbesses protected their temporal wealth. Another, during the tumultuous Wars of the Roses, had to navigate treacherous political waters, pledging loyalty to whichever faction held the upper hand, while striving to preserve the abbey's neutrality and assets. Stories tell of royal visits, grand processions, and the occasional high society scandal that would ripple through the quiet cloister. There were tales of runaway nuns, of illicit romances, though these were rare and swiftly dealt with, serving more as cautionary legends than widespread reality. The overwhelming narrative of Shaftesbury was one of order, devotion, and immense enduring power. The end of Shaftesbury Abbey, like so many other monastic institutions, came with the dissolution of the monasteries under King Henry VIII. In 1539, the abbey, still flourishing and wealthy, was dissolved, its lands confiscated by the crown, and its magnificent buildings systematically dismantled for their valuable stone and lead. The abbess, Elizabeth Zruch, and her community were pensioned off, forced to abandon the ancient walls that had been their home and the center of their world for over 6 centuries. The once grand church where kings had been laid to rest and prayers had ascended for generations was reduced to rubble, its stones carted away to build local houses and roads. Today, only scattered ruins remain, offering tantalizing glimpses of the immense scale and grandeur that once defined Shaftesbury Abbey, a testament to a forgotten era when women held incredible sway from within the heart of a powerful religious house. The ground where the main altar once stood now sits beneath a modern road, a quiet reminder of the dramatic transformation of sacred space into everyday thoroughfare. The legacy of its wealth and spiritual significance still echoes through the history of England, a potent symbol of female leadership and enduring religious devotion in the Middle Ages. Number 8. Barking Abbey. In the ancient lands of Essex, nestled beside the River Roding, stood Barking Abbey, an institution whose roots plunged deeper into the soil of England than almost any other. Founded as early as 666 AD by St. Erkenwald, the Bishop of London, for his sister St. Ethelburga, Barking was not merely old, it was one of the very first nunneries established in England, predating even the formal organization of much of the English Church. This extraordinary age conferred upon it an almost mythical status, a foundational pillar of Anglo-Saxon Christianity. St. Ethelburga herself was a formidable leader, and under her guidance, Barking quickly became a center of learning and spirituality, attracting women of high social standing, including members of royal families from the Anglo-Saxon kingdom. The abbey's early history is intertwined with the very development of English monasticism, setting precedents for later foundations. Barking Abbey maintained a remarkable reputation for spiritual rigor and intellectual pursuit throughout its long existence. Unlike some later, more relaxed houses, Barking consistently upheld a high standard of monastic discipline, drawing nuns who were genuinely committed to a life of piety and scholarly endeavor. The nuns were celebrated for their literacy, often excelling in Latin and other languages, copying manuscripts, and producing illuminated texts. This intellectual vibrancy attracted a steady stream of noble and royal patrons, ensuring its continued prosperity and influence. King William the Conqueror, after his victory at Hastings in 1066, famously stayed at Barking Abbey for a period while the Tower of London was being constructed, a testament to the abbey's security, prestige, and the perceived stability of its abbess. His presence there further solidified its standing in the new Norman order. The Abbess of Barking held immense authority, not just within the abbey walls, but also across its vast estates. She was often granted liberties that placed her outside the direct jurisdiction of local bishops, reporting directly to the Archbishop of Canterbury or even the Pope himself. This autonomy made the Abbess of Barking a figure of considerable independent power, a spiritual sovereign over her domain. The abbey's landholdings were extensive, stretching across multiple counties, bringing in significant revenue from rents, tithes, and feudal services. This wealth allowed the abbey to support a large community of nuns, often numbering over 60, along with numerous lay sisters, servants, and laborers. The sheer scale of its operations required an abbess who was not only devout, but also a highly competent administrator and a shrewd manager of vast resources. The buildings of Barking Abbey evolved over centuries, growing from humble Anglo-Saxon structures into a magnificent complex befitting its status. The Abbey Church was a grand edifice, rebuilt and expanded multiple times, reflecting the changing architectural styles of the Norman, Gothic, and Perpendicular periods. It would have housed numerous altars, chapels, and the tombs of various royal and noble patrons, all richly adorned. Cloisters provided a serene space for contemplation, connecting the nuns' dormitory to the chapter house and refectory. An infirmary provided care for the sick, while a guest house welcomed visitors and pilgrims. Beyond the cloister, a buzzing world of workshops, bakeries, breweries, and stables supported the daily life of the community. The abbey was a hub of activity, a spiritual and economic powerhouse that played a central role in the lives of the local populace. Daily life for the nuns at Barking followed the Benedictine rule, a rigorous schedule of prayer, study, and work. They rose before dawn for matins and observed the 7 other canonical hours throughout the day, their lives punctuated by the ringing of bells. Beyond their spiritual duties, the nuns engaged in a variety of tasks, from tending to the abbey's gardens and managing its accounts to educating young girls from noble families. Barking was renowned for its school, which offered an education far superior to what was available to most women of the era. Young women, both those destined for the cloister and those who would return to secular life, received instruction in Latin, calligraphy, music, and the liberal arts, preparing them for influential roles in society. This educational mission underscored the abbey's importance as a center of culture and knowledge. Barking also had its share of unique stories and personalities. The Abbess Maud of Waltham in the mid-13th century was known for her fierce defense of the abbey's liberties against encroachments from the Bishop of London. Her determination in legal disputes earned her respect and fear. Another abbess during the Black Death in the mid-14th century faced the immense challenge of maintaining the community's spiritual and physical well-being amidst widespread death and disruption, a testament to the resilience and leadership required in such times. There were also the occasional narratives of royal daughters choosing the veil at Barking, turning their backs on earthly power for spiritual devotion, though sometimes these choices were made out of political necessity or personal tragedy, rather than purely spiritual calling. These stories added to the rich tapestry of Barking's history, painting a picture of a dynamic living institution. The inevitable end for Barking Abbey arrived in 1539, swept away by the tide of the dissolution of the monasteries. Despite its ancient lineage, its spiritual prestige, and its immense wealth, it could not withstand the will of King Henry VIII. The last abbess, Dorothy Barley, along with her community, surrendered the abbey to the crown, their centuries-old home destined for destruction. The abbey church and many of its buildings were systematically demolished, their valuable materials scavenged for other constructions. Today, only fragments remain of this once magnificent foundation, the outline of its vast footprint still visible in the modern town of Barking. A few crumbling walls, some excavated foundations, and the occasional unearthed beccup are all that testify to the enduring legacy of a place that shaped the very beginnings of Christian England and continued to exert profound influence for nearly 900 years. Number 7. Wilton Abbey. In the picturesque county of Wiltshire, standing proudly near the modern town of Salisbury, lay Wilton Abbey, another powerful and ancient Benedictine nunnery with deep royal roots, founded, or at least greatly enhanced, by King Egbert of Wessex In the early 9th century, Wilton shared a similar trajectory to Shaftesbury and Barking, quickly becoming a favored retreat and spiritual home for royal and aristocratic women. Its strategic location close to the powerful Wessex capital of Winchester further cemented its importance in the Anglo-Saxon and later Norman political landscape. Wilton was frequently a refuge for queens and princesses, offering them a secure and prestigious place to live, often after political upheaval or widowhood. This constant connection to the crown provided Wilton with significant patronage, ensuring its continued prosperity and influence throughout the Middle Ages. Wilton Abbey was renowned not only for its royal connections, but also for its spiritual rigor and its reputation as a center of learning. The nuns followed a strict interpretation of the Benedictine rule, dedicating their lives to prayer, study, and good works. Like Barking, Wilton was known for the high intellectual caliber of its community. Many nuns were literate, engaged in the copying of manuscripts, and contributed to the abbey's growing library. The education offered within its walls was highly sought after by noble families, who sent their daughters to Wilton to receive a comprehensive education that included Latin, arithmetic, music, and the refined arts necessary for courtly life or the cloister. This dual role as a spiritual powerhouse and an educational institution attracted a steady stream of elite recruits, ensuring the abbey's continued prominence. The Abbess of Wilton was a figure of immense authority, often wielding power comparable to a major baron. Her influence extended far beyond the abbey walls, encompassing extensive landholdings across Wiltshire and neighboring counties. These estates provided a substantial income, allowing Wilton to maintain a large community of nuns, lay sisters, and a vast retinue of servants and workers. The abbess was a significant feudal lord, responsible for justice within her demesne, collecting rents and managing agricultural output. This required not only spiritual leadership, but also astute business, acumen, and a strong understanding of legal and administrative matters. She was frequently engaged in legal disputes to protect the abbey's rights and property, demonstrating her formidable resolve and power. The Abbey Church at Wilton was a structure of considerable beauty and grandeur, reflecting centuries of pious donations and architectural investment. It would have featured numerous altars, chapels, and possibly relics, drawing pilgrims from far and wide. Cloisters provided a quiet space for contemplation and movement between the various parts of the monastic complex, including the dormitory, refectory, and chapter house and infirmary. The grounds also housed extensive gardens, orchards, fish ponds, and service buildings like bakeries, breweries, and laundries, making the abbey largely self-sufficient. The entire precinct was a hive of activity, supporting not only the monastic community, but also a substantial lay workforce and occasional guests. Life within Wilton, while structured by the monastic routine, also offered a unique blend of spiritual devotion and aristocratic refinement. The nuns, often drawn from high, noble families, brought with them certain expectations and customs. While simplicity was preached, the reality of managing such a wealthy institution often meant fine vestments, well-prepared meals, and amenities that might surprise a modern observer. There were certainly moments of solemnity and austerity, but also occasions of communal celebration and the quiet joy of scholarly pursuit. Presence of royal figures, whether as permanent residents or temporary guests, added a distinctive dimension to Wilton's atmosphere. Queens like Edith of Wessex, wife of Edward the Confessor, or Matilda, Empress and daughter of Henry I, found refuge or spent time within its walls. One of the more intriguing stories associated with Wilton Abbey involves the Empress Matilda, daughter of Henry I, who was briefly educated there. Another tale involves King Canute and his wife, Emma of Normandy. Legend has it that Canute once visited Wilton and was so impressed by the devoutness and beauty of a nun named Edith, a granddaughter of King Edgar, that he wished her to become his wife. Edith, however, famously preferred her consecrated life and refused the king a powerful testament to the spiritual conviction of the women within the cloister. Later, another royal Edith, daughter of King Edward the Elder, also lived at Wilton, adding to its long list of distinguished residents. These stories highlight the abbey's reputation and its draw for women of exceptional lineage and character. The end of Wilton Abbey mirrored that of its sister institutions. In 1539, after centuries of unbroken existence and profound influence, it too fell victim to King Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. The last abbess, Isabel Jourdain, surrendered the abbey and its vast possessions to the crown. The once magnificent church and monastic buildings were systematically dismantled, their materials sold off or repurposed. Today, the site of Wilton Abbey is largely occupied by Wilton House, the stately home of the Earls of Pembroke, built partly with stones salvaged from the abbey. While the monastic structures themselves are gone, the influence and history of Wilton Abbey continue to resonate through the landscape, and in the historical records, a vivid reminder of the enduring power and prestige of medieval English nunneries and the remarkable women who inhabited them. Number 6. Ramsey Abbey. Nestled in the picturesque valley of the River Test in Hampshire, Ramsey Abbey stood as another major Benedictine nunnery, rivaling its contemporaries in wealth and influence. Founded in the early 10th century by King Edward the Elder, son of Alfred the Great, Ramsey quickly became a revered institution, attracting a distinguished line of royal and noble women to its holy enclosure. Its location in Wessex, the heartland of Anglo-Saxon power, ensured its ongoing connection to the crown and its prosperity. Ramsey was particularly known for the purity of its rule and the high standards of its spiritual observance, often serving as a model for other foundations. The abbey's reputation for piety and good governance was a key factor in its enduring appeal. The Abbess of Ramsey was a woman of immense authority, holding sway over vast estates and a numerous community. The abbey's land holdings were extensive, generating substantial income that allowed for the maintenance of its grand buildings and the support of its inhabitants. Like other major nunneries, Ramsey was largely autonomous, its abbess often answering directly to the crown or the archbishop rather than local bishops. This independence conferred significant political and social power, allowing the abbess to act as a major regional magnate. She presided over her own courts, administered justice, and managed the complex economic affairs of the abbey's far-flung properties, a role that required both spiritual devotion and considerable administrative skill. The architectural grandeur of Ramsey Abbey today, despite the destruction of much of the monastic complex, still speaks volumes about its medieval magnificence. The surviving Abbey Church, now the parish church of Ramsey, is a testament to Norman and Gothic craftsmanship, a vast and imposing structure. In its monastic heyday, the church would have been surrounded by the cloister, linking to the dormitory refectory, and a chapter house and infirmary. Beyond these core buildings, the Abbey precinct contained a complex network of workshops, bakeries, breweries, guest houses, and agricultural buildings, supporting a large resident population of nuns, lay sisters, and servants. The sheer scale of the operation meant Ramsey was a bustling hub of activity, a spiritual and economic center for the entire region. Life for the nuns at Ramsey followed the rigorous Benedictine rule, a meticulously ordered day of prayer, study, and work. They rose before dawn for matins, the first of the 7 daily offices, and their lives were punctuated by the rhythmic chiming of bells calling them to worship. Community was often large, sometimes exceeding 100 nuns, drawn from aristocratic families across England. Many brought substantial dowries, further enriching the abbey and contributing to its ability to maintain its high standards. Ramsey was also a renowned center of education, offering aristocratic young women instruction in Latin, music, calligraphy, and needlework, preparing them for either a life in the cloister or a return to secular society, with enhanced cultural capital. This educational mission was a significant aspect of the Abbey's societal contribution. Ramsey Abbey was particularly notable for its strong ties to the English royal family. Several royal women were associated with the abbey, either as nuns or as abbesses. Princess Mary, daughter of King Stephen, famously became Abbess of Ramsey in the 12th century. Her story is one of the most intriguing and perhaps scandalous in Ramsey's history. Despite her vows, she was compelled to marry Matthew of Alsace for political reasons, to solidify a powerful alliance. This forced marriage was controversial, as it required papal dispensation and caused a considerable stir across Europe, highlighting the immense pressures and political maneuvering that could impact monastic life even at the highest levels. After bearing 2 daughters, Mary eventually returned to the monastic life, though perhaps not at Ramsey, and the marriage was eventually annulled, demonstrating the complicated intersection of faith, politics, and personal destiny. Another interesting tale revolves around the powerful Abbess Christina of Markiate, who briefly resided at Ramsey before moving to Markiate. She was known for her exceptional piety and her resistance to a forced marriage, eventually finding refuge in the monastic life. These narratives showcase the varied experiences of women who entered the cloister, some willingly seeking spiritual solace, others navigating complex, societal pressures or personal struggles. The Abbey's reputation for holiness was so strong that even tales of defiance or external political interference ultimately affirmed its spiritual foundations. The presence of numerous noble women within its walls meant Ramsey was a place where powerful families connected, where alliances were sometimes forged, and where the daughters of the elite received both spiritual and worldly education. The demise of Ramsey Abbey, like its contemporaries, arrived with the dissolution of the monasteries under Henry VIII. In 1539, the last abbess, Elizabeth Ryprose, along with her community, surrendered the abbey to the crown. Mercifully, unlike many other monastic churches, the magnificent abbey church at Ramsey was spared complete destruction, purchased by the townspeople to serve as their parish church. This fortunate turn of events means that today visitors can still experience the grandeur of its Norman and Gothic architecture, a powerful echo of its monastic past. The other monastic buildings, however, including the cloisters, dormitories, and refectory, were largely demolished, their materials dispersed. Yet, the surviving church stands as a monumental testament to the abbey's long and illustrious history, a monument to the piety, power, and enduring legacy of the women who once inhabited its sacred spaces. Number 5. Godsto Abbey. Just north of Oxford, nestled by the winding River Thames, lay Godsto Abbey, a Benedictine nunnery that, while perhaps not as ancient as Barking or as consistently wealthy as Shaftesbury, earned an enduring place in English history due to its connection with one of the medieval period's most captivating figures, Rosamund Clifford, King Henry II's legion mistress. Founded in 1133 by Edith Lancelin, with initial support from King Henry I, Godsto quickly established itself as a respectable and well-regarded monastic house. It attracted a steady stream of nuns from respectable families and managed its estates with care, securing a comfortable, if not extravagant, existence for its community. Proximity to the burgeoning intellectual center of Oxford also gave it a unique flavor, drawing scholars and visitors. Godsto Abbey was more than just a footnote in a royal romance. It was a functioning, devout, monastic community with its own rhythms and contributions to medieval society. The abbess, like her counterparts in other major nunneries, held significant authority, managing the abbey's lands and spiritual affairs. While its wealth was not on the scale of Shaftesbury or Wilton, Godsto was still comfortably endowed, owning several manors and properties that provided a stable income. The nuns followed the Benedictine rule, dedicating their lives to prayer, study, and manual work. They were known for their hospitality, often hosting travelers and pilgrims journeying along the Thames or visiting nearby Oxford. The abbey also maintained a reputation for its spiritual observances and the care of its sick and elderly. The physical layout of Godsto Abbey, though now largely ruins, would have included a substantial church, cloisters, dormitories, a refectory, and various service buildings. The stone remains that exist today, including parts of the chapter house and outer walls, hint at a well-built and orderly complex. The tranquil setting by the river would have offered a sense of peace and seclusion conducive to monastic life, while still being accessible to the wider world. The abbey's gardens and agricultural lands would have provided much of its sustenance, and the nuns would have engaged in various forms of craft and scholarship, as was common in Benedictine houses. They were often literate, reading and copying religious texts, contributing to the cultural fabric of the region. The most famous resident of Godsto Abbey, though perhaps not a nun in the traditional sense, was Rosamund Clifford. Her story is one of love, scandal, and a mysterious end, forever intertwined with the Abbey's history. Rosamund was the beautiful and beloved mistress of King Henry II, a relationship that caused considerable tension with his formidable queen, Eleanor of Aquitaine. To keep her safe and secret, or perhaps as a gesture of piety in her later years, Henry II is said to have established a residence for Rosamund within or near Godsto Abbey. Some accounts suggest she became a nun there in her later life, or at least spent her final days within its sacred precinct, perhaps after falling out of royal favor or succumbing to illness. Regardless of the exact circumstances, she died at Godsto in 1176 and was buried within the abbey church. Rosamund's tomb at Godsto quickly became a site of popular veneration. Henry II himself made generous donations to the abbey in her memory, ensuring her continued presence there. However, this popular devotion to a king's mistress, even a penitent one, did not sit well with the more austere elements of the church. Hugh of Lincoln, the fiercely pious Bishop of Lincoln, visiting Godsto in 1191, was reportedly appalled by the elaborate shrine dedicated to Rosamund within the choir of the nuns' church. He commanded that her body be removed and buried outside the church, stating that a woman whose life had been one of public immorality should not be honored alongside the chaste nuns. This dramatic intervention highlights the tension between popular piety, royal patronage, and orthodox religious sensibilities in the Middle Ages. Despite this controversy, the legend of Rosamund Clifford persisted, adding a romantic and slightly scandalous layer to Godsto's otherwise pious narrative. Her story ensured the abbey's name would live on in ballads, plays, and historical accounts, making it one of the most remembered, if not always for purely spiritual reasons, of England's medieval nunneries. Beyond Rosamund, Godsto continued its daily monastic life for centuries, offering spiritual guidance, hospitality, and a structured environment for women seeking a devout life. The nuns navigated periods of plague, political unrest, and economic challenges, maintaining their community through changing times. The final act for Godsto Abbey arrived, as it did for so many, with the dissolution of the monasteries under Henry VIII. In 1538, the abbey was surrendered to the crown. Buildings, including the church where Rosamund Clifford had once been buried, were systematically demolished. The valuable stone and lead were carted away, leaving behind the skeletal remains that can be seen today. Today, the ruins of Godsto Abbey stand as a melancholic reminder of a powerful religious institution and the famous tragic figure forever linked to its stones. The quiet beauty of the riverside setting still offers a sense of the peace that once pervaded these hallowed grounds, even as the dramatic tales of royalty and romance continue to captivate those who visit. Number 4. St. Marys Abbey, Winchester. In the ancient Saxon capital of Winchester, a city steeped in royal history and ecclesiastical power, stood St. Marys Abbey, often referred to simply as the Nunneminster. This venerable Benedictine nunnery, founded by Alfred the Great's wife, Queen Ælfswith, around 903 AD, was conceived as a spiritual counterpart to the Old Minster and New Minster, later Hyde Abbey, forming a powerful triumvirate of monastic institutions within the city walls. St. Mary's was intended as a place of prayer and retreat for royal and noble women, and throughout its history, it served precisely that purpose, attracting daughters and widows of kings and high aristocracy, cementing its status as one of England's most important nunneries. St. Mary's Abbey was a spiritual and cultural anchor in Winchester, a city that served as the heart of Anglo-Saxon and early Norman England. Its establishment by a queen underscored its direct connection to the monarchy, a patronage that continued for centuries and ensured its prosperity. The Abbess of St. Mary's wielded significant influence, not only over her community, but also within the city itself. She managed extensive landholdings, which provided a substantial income, allowing the abbey to maintain its impressive buildings and support a large number of nuns. The abbey was often exempt from episcopal control, reporting directly to the king or archbishop, granting the abbess a degree of autonomy rarely seen elsewhere. This independence allowed her to act as a powerful figure in her own right, engaged in legal, economic, and social affairs far beyond the cloister. The architecture of St. Mary's Abbey, though now almost entirely vanished, would have been grand, reflecting its wealth and importance. The Abbey Church, dedicated to the Virgin Mary, would have been a significant structure with chapels, altars, and possibly royal tombs. Surrounding the church were the cloisters, dormitory, refectory, chapter house, and infirmary, all built to accommodate a large community. Beyond these core monastic buildings, the Abbey precinct contained extensive gardens, orchards, workshops, and lodgings for servants and lay workers, making it a self-sufficient and bustling entity. Its location within the highly populated and politically significant city of Winchester meant it was deeply embedded in urban life, influencing and being influenced by the city's commerce and society. Life for the nuns of St. Mary's was structured by the Benedictine rule, a demanding routine of prayer, study, and work. They rose before dawn from matins, observed the canonical hours throughout the day, and dedicated themselves to contemplative practices. Many of the nuns came from the highest echelons of English society, bringing with them a high degree of literacy and cultural refinement. The abbey was renowned for its educational offerings, providing noble girls with an excellent grounding in Latin religious texts, music, and courtly arts. This education made St. Mary's a desirable destination for aristocratic families seeking to secure their daughters' future, whether within the cloister or back in the secular world. The nuns also engaged in the copying and illumination of manuscripts, contributing to the abbey's impressive library. St. Mary's Abbey is particularly famous for its association with several royal women. Edbur, daughter of King Edward the Elder and granddaughter of Alfred the Great, became a nun there and was later venerated as a saint. Her tomb within the Abbey Church became a focal point for pilgrims, drawing offerings and enhancing the Abbey's spiritual prestige. Another notable figure was Matilda, the daughter of Queen Emma and King Canute, who was educated at St. Mary's. These royal connections ensured a steady flow of patronage and enhanced the Abbey's reputation as a sanctuary for aristocratic women, providing them with a secure and honorable life. The Abbey also played a role in royal rituals and ceremonies, hosting important events due to its proximity to the royal palace in Winchester. Despite its prestige, life at St. Mary's, like any large institution, was not without its challenges. The nuns would have faced periods of plague, famine, and political upheaval. They had to manage their extensive estates, defend their rights against encroachments, and navigate the complex legal landscape of the medieval period. Records indicate various disputes over land and privileges, demonstrating the abbess's need for shrewd negotiation and legal acumen. The abbey was not entirely immune to internal issues, though most accounts portray it as a well-ordered and devout community. The occasional scandal, likely exaggerated by external chroniclers, would have served as a cautionary tale rather than a reflection of daily life. The long and illustrious history of St. Marys Abbey came to an abrupt end with the dissolution of the monasteries in 1539. The last abbess, Elizabeth Shelley, a woman of considerable fortitude and reputation, surrendered the abbey to King Henry VIII's commissioners. Like many others, the magnificent abbey church and all its monastic buildings were systematically demolished. The valuable stone and lead were stripped away, and the site was gradually redeveloped. Today, almost no visible trace remains of St. Marys Abbey in modern Winchester. Its footprint is covered by later buildings and roads, a testament to the comprehensive destruction wrought during the dissolution. Yet, its memory persists in historical records, in the tales of its royal occupants, and in the archaeological finds that occasionally surface, offering tantalizing glimpses of a profound spiritual and social force that once shaped the very heart of England. Number 3. Scion Abbey. On the north bank of the River Thames, near Isleworth, in Middlesex, stood Scion Abbey, a uniquely important and deeply fascinating monastic institution, founded in 1415 by King Henry V. What made Scion truly stand out was its adherence to the Brigittine rule, a distinct monastic order. The Brigittine order was unique in England for its concept of a double monastery, though at Scion this meant separate, cloistered communities for nuns and monks living under one abbess, the male community serving as confessors and chaplains to the female community. This structure created a highly intellectual and disciplined environment unlike any other in medieval England, making Scion a beacon of learning and spiritual reform. Scion Abbey was not just unique in its structure, but also in its purpose. Henry V founded it as part of his penance for the execution of Archbishop Scrope and as a prayer for his success in his French campaigns. It was intended as a spiritual engine for the kingdom, a place of intense prayer for the king and his realm. The Brigittine rule, known for its strict asceticism and emphasis on contemplation, study, and the saving of souls, attracted a dedicated community. The Abbess of Scion was a powerful figure, governing both the male and female communities, though day-to-day management of the male brethren was delegated to a confessor general. This shared governance with ultimate authority, resting with the abbess, was highly unusual and a testament to the intellectual and spiritual leadership expected of her. The Brigittine rule placed enormous emphasis on study and the copying of books. Consequently, Scion Abbey became an unrivaled intellectual powerhouse, boasting one of the largest and most significant monastic libraries in England, surpassed perhaps only by the great universities. The nuns and monks were highly literate, many fluent in Latin, English, and sometimes other languages. They dedicated themselves to translating religious texts, writing treatises, and creating new works, often for the spiritual benefit of the lay public. Scion's output included popular devotional works, theological treatises, and instructional texts, making it a center of literary and spiritual innovation that reached beyond its walls. This intellectual pursuit meant that the nuns were not just pious but highly educated and articulate women, capable of profound theological thought. The physical layout of Scion Abbey reflected its unique double monastery structure with separate cloisters and living quarters for the nuns and monks, though they shared the magnificent abbey church for services. The church itself was designed to facilitate this, with separate entrances and viewing areas for each community, ensuring strict enclosure while allowing for communal worship. Beyond the core monastic buildings, Scion, like other large abbeys, maintained extensive gardens, workshops, and agricultural lands. Its location on the Thames meant it was easily accessible by water, aiding in the transport of goods and the arrival of visitors and scholars seeking spiritual guidance or access to its renowned library. The abbey was largely self-sufficient, a bustling center of activity. Life at Scion was characterized by intense spiritual discipline and scholarly pursuit. The nuns and monks adhered to a strict regimen of prayer, fasting, and silence. Their days were filled with liturgical services, private prayer, study, and manual labor, often related to the production of books. The Brigittine rule also stipulated the number of members in the community: 60 nuns, 13 priests, 4 deacons, and 8 lay brothers, symbolizing the 12 apostles, St. Paul, and the 72 disciples. This fixed number ensured a cohesive and dedicated community focused on its spiritual mission. The nuns' enclosure was particularly strict, emphasizing separation from the secular world to allow for deep contemplation and devotion. Scion Abbey, despite its strictness, was never isolated from the outside world. Its intellectual output and the spiritual guidance it offered made it a destination for pilgrims, patrons, and scholars. Its connections to the royal family remained strong, with many members of the aristocracy choosing Scion for their daughters, or as a place of retreat. The abbey was also known for its strong reformist leanings, reflecting a desire to purify the church and return to earlier, more ascetic ideals. This commitment to reform, however, ironically placed it in opposition to the religious changes sweeping through England in the 16th century. The end for Scion Abbey was protracted and ultimately dramatic. It was one of the last monastic institutions in England to resist the dissolution of the monasteries. Steadfast adherence to the Catholic faith and its unique spiritual independence made it a target for Henry VIII. The last abbess, Agnes Jordan, a woman of remarkable courage and conviction, initially resisted the commissioners, refusing to surrender her community and its principles. However, facing overwhelming pressure and threats, Scion Abbey was eventually forced to surrender in 1539. Yet, unlike most other abbeys, the community of Scion did not simply disperse. They went into exile, maintaining their monastic life on the continent for decades, a testament to their unwavering faith and resilience. The buildings of Scion Abbey were demolished, their valuable materials scavenged. The site was later granted to the Duke of Northumberland, who built Scion House, a magnificent stately home, upon its foundations. Today, Scion House stands as a grand reminder of the abbey's past, though little of the original monastic structure remains. Yet, the legacy of Scion Abbey, its intellectual contributions, its unique Brigittine rule, and the remarkable fortitude of its community, particularly in their defiance and subsequent exile, makes it a truly extraordinary chapter in the history of medieval English convents, embodying a spirit of unyielding devotion. Number 2. Minoresses of Algate, London. Within the bustling, often chaotic walls of medieval London, a unique and lesser-known monastic community thrived: the Minoresses of Algate. This was not a Benedictine house, but a convent of the Poor Clares, or Minoresses, as they were commonly known in England, an order founded by Saint Clare of Assisi in the early 13th century. Established in 1293 by Edmund, Earl of Lancaster, younger brother of King Edward I, the Minoresses of Algate brought a different flavor of monasticism to the urban environment of London. Their rule was one of extreme poverty, simplicity, and strict enclosure, a stark contrast to the often wealthy and outwardly grand Benedictine houses. This commitment to Franciscan ideals made them distinct among London's numerous religious foundations. The Minoresses of Algate were deliberately founded in a relatively poor and densely populated area just outside the city walls, near the major thoroughfare of Aldgate. This location was deliberate, reflecting the Franciscan emphasis on living among the poor and serving the local community, though their strict enclosure meant their direct interaction was limited. Their poverty was not merely symbolic. They owned no communal property and relied on alms and the occasional benefaction for their sustenance. This precarious existence, while spiritually rigorous, made them particularly vulnerable to economic hardship and the vagaries of royal and noble patronage. Yet, Their commitment to their vows often attracted women of deep spiritual conviction, some even from noble families seeking a life of profound humility. The abbess, or more accurately, the abbess and the community's elected Mother Superior, held authority over the nuns, managing their spiritual and temporal affairs, though the latter were often meager. Life within the Minoresses was one of constant self-denial and spiritual discipline. The nuns engaged in manual labor, often producing textiles or devotional objects, which could be sold or exchanged for food and other necessities. They spent their days in prayer, contemplation, and study, adhering strictly to their vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Their enclosure was particularly rigid, designed to protect them from the distractions and temptations of the bustling city just beyond their walls, ensuring a life dedicated entirely to God. The buildings of the Minoresses of Algate, reflecting their vow of poverty, were likely simpler and less grand than their Benedictine counterparts. The church, cloisters, dormitory, and refectory would have been functional and austere, built for purpose rather than elaborate display. However, even within this simplicity, there would have been a profound sense of order and spiritual calm. Convent would have been relatively compact, designed for a smaller community, perhaps no more than 50 nuns at its peak. Despite their poverty, the Minoresses still required some lay support for maintenance, security, and the collection of alms, creating a small, self-contained community. The Minoresses played a unique role in the spiritual life of London. While strictly enclosed, their presence was felt in the city. Their prayers were believed to benefit the entire metropolis, and their exemplary lives served as a visible testament to radical piety. Noble families occasionally entrusted daughters to their care for education, though the focus was more on spiritual formation and practical skills than on the broader academic curriculum offered by wealthier nunneries. The nuns were often skilled in needlework and embroidery, producing high-quality vestments and altar cloths for local churches, offering a valuable service and a means of income. Despite their humble means, the Minoresses of Algate attracted occasional royal attention. Queen Isabella, wife of Edward II, notably visited the convent, and her daughter Eleanor was even a nun there for a period, though she later left the cloister. These royal connections, though intermittent, brought temporary patronage and a measure of prestige to the often struggling community. The nuns would have lived through some of London's most tumultuous periods, including the Black Death, which devastated the city, and the Peasants' Revolt, which saw the city gates breached and chaos erupt. Their continued existence through these crises is a testament to their resilience and the enduring spiritual commitment of the community. One particular story highlights the challenges faced by this community. In the mid-15th century, a report emerged about the poor condition of the Minoresses' buildings and their dwindling finances, requiring external intervention and renewed benefactions. This caused the constant struggle for survival for an order reliant on alms in an urban environment. Yet, through these difficulties, the community persevered, maintaining its strict rule and its spiritual mission in the heart of England's largest city. Their quiet piety was a constant presence amidst the clamor of London's markets and streets. The end of the Minoresses of Algate came inevitably with the dissolution of the monasteries in 1539. As a relatively small and less wealthy foundation, they were an easier target for King Henry VIII's commissioners. The abbess and her few remaining nuns were pensioned off, and the convent was surrendered. The buildings were quickly demolished, and the site was eventually redeveloped, disappearing beneath the expanding urban fabric of London. Today, almost no physical trace of the Minoresses of Algate remains. Their history is largely confined to charters and records, a poignant reminder of a unique order of women who chose a life of profound poverty and strict enclosure, quietly serving God in the heart of a bustling medieval metropolis. Their story is a testament to the diverse forms of monastic life that existed in England, and the unwavering commitment of women to their chosen path, even in the face of immense hardship. Number 1. Lac Abbey. Our final destination takes us to Wiltshire, again, to Lac Abbey, a truly unique example among English convents, not least because its magnificent buildings still largely stand, though transformed into a stately home. Founded in 1232 by Ella, Countess of Salisbury, Lac was a Cistercian nunnery, an order known for its emphasis on austerity, manual labor, and isolation from the secular world. Ella herself was a remarkable woman, a powerful heiress, sheriff of Wiltshire, and later a devout widow who founded not only Lac, but also the male Cistercian house of Hinton Charterhouse. Her strong leadership and piety shaped the early years of Lac, setting a precedent for its future. The Cistercian rule at Lac was stricter than that of many Benedictine houses, emphasizing a life of quiet contemplation and hard work. The nuns, engaged in agricultural labor, managed the abbey's estates and cultivated their own food. While not as wealthy as the great Benedictine abbeys like Shaftesbury, Lac was comfortably endowed, owning extensive lands and water rights, particularly important for its mills. The Abbess of Lac was a significant figure in the local community, managing the abbey's considerable economic affairs and administering justice within its domain. Her role required a strong combination of spiritual leadership and practical management skills, overseeing the daily lives of the nuns and the vast lay workforce. The architecture of Lac Abbey is perhaps its most compelling feature, as the main monastic buildings were remarkably preserved after the dissolution, largely because they were converted into a private residence rather than demolished for their materials. The surviving portions offer an unparalleled glimpse into the layout and scale of a medieval Cistercian nunnery. The magnificent cloister with its intricate vaulting remains intact, providing a vivid sense of the serene space where the nuns once walked in quiet contemplation. The chapter house, sacristy, and parts of the dormitory and refectory are still visible, having been cleverly integrated into the later house. The abbey church, however, was largely demolished, its stones likely reused in the domestic conversion. Life for the nuns at Lac was a rigorous cycle of prayer work and study, adhering to the Cistercian emphasis on simplicity and self-sufficiency. They rose early for matins, their days punctuated by the 7 canonical hours, punctuated by periods of manual labor in the fields or workshops. The nuns were expected to be literate, engaging in reading and copying religious texts, though perhaps with less emphasis on broader academic pursuits than some of the more elite Benedictine houses. Their isolation, inherent in the Cistercian tradition, was not absolute. They maintained contact with the outside world through the management of their estates and interactions with lay servants and occasional visitors. Lac Abbey, while renowned for its pious founder, also had its share of challenges and human stories. The nuns would have navigated periods of economic hardship, disease, and the changing political landscape of medieval England. The abbess had to be a shrewd manager, protecting the abbey's assets and defending its rights against encroachments from local lords or royal officials. Records indicate legal disputes over land and resources, demonstrating the abbess's need for determination and legal acumen. Despite the Cistercian ideal of isolation, the abbey was deeply embedded in the local community, providing employment, charity, and spiritual guidance to the surrounding populace. One fascinating aspect of Lac's history is its direct link to its founder, Ella. She retired to the abbey in 1238, becoming a nun herself, and was elected abbess in 1240, serving until her death in 1261. Her leadership as abbess for over 2 decades after a lifetime of secular power and wealth exemplifies the profound spiritual dedication that often motivated women to enter the cloister. Her tomb was later placed within the abbey church, a testament to her enduring influence and sanctity. Her story is a powerful reminder that these institutions were not just places of retreat, but also stages for women to exercise profound leadership, and commitment. The dissolution of Lac Abbey came in 1539, as with so many others. The last abbess, Joanna Thames, surrendered the abbey to the crown. However, a remarkable fate awaited Lac. Rather than being utterly destroyed, the abbey was purchased by Sir William Sherrington, a wealthy courtier. He set about converting the monastic buildings into a comfortable and stylish country house, ingeniously incorporating much of the existing structure. This transformation preserved the cloister, chapter house, and other significant parts of the medieval abbey, allowing them to survive to the present day. Today, Lac Abbey stands as a unique and invaluable historical treasure. It is not only a testament to the lives of the Cistercian nuns who once inhabited it, but also a rare surviving example of monastic architecture, beautifully adapted for domestic use. The cloister, which once echoed with the silent footsteps of nuns, now welcomes visitors from around the world. It provides a tangible link to the past, allowing us to step directly into the spaces where medieval women lived, prayed, and worked, offering perhaps the clearest visual evidence of their daily lives and the enduring power of these remarkable institutions. Lac Abbey is a powerful silent witness to the spiritual and social history of medieval England and the women who shaped it.